here's your host, Paul Catalina.
Alongside Mr. Monday, Chris Allman. We'll find it. We'll find the nickname.
Mr. Monday.
Mr. Monday.
Astros Monday. I'm ready to talk about it. Let's go. Oh, wrong show?
Wrong show. But we had a really interesting college football weekend once again. They're not very rarely are they not. You know, there's a couple of dud weekends in there, but there's always something that happens. And right off the bat, Deion hype train keeps on rolling I don't think it was very unexpected what they did in Nebraska. I was impressed that Nebraska held it as close as they did for as long as they did with no offense. But the Deion hype train keeps rolling. But the big story is Texas beating Alabama in Bryant-Denny Stadium and doing it in a fashion in which, at the end of the game, Nick Saban does this thing when they're losing or they've lost where he goes Mary Catherine Gallagher. He puts his hands under his arms. And for people who don't get that reference, it was a Molly Shannon SNL sketch back in the 90s that spurned a very mediocre at best
That was an obscure
movie.
and dated reference. Yeah. I'm tracking, though.
But he puts his hands like he does this, and that's it. That means you've got Nick Saban. The minute that he does that.
It's the equivalent of him tapping out.
Yeah, that's it. You've got him. I think he's trying to, constrict his rage. So he just, grabs his chest around.
Yeah. But it doesn't happen often.
No.
So it's pretty rare to get to see it.
Yeah, if you go look at the end of the game against Johnny Manziel, the LSU game ended, in the last actual play last year. But especially
he didn't have time to pout.
Yeah, any of the losses, especially that happened at Bryant-Denny, which are very few.
Yeah.
They're very few. He does that, and you're like, oh, you got him. And it was a wild thing to see Texas not only beat Alabama, but really be better in so many aspects of the game, as where last year was a little bit of a tight, both teams played tight the whole time.
Yeah.
This one was not that, and Quinn Ewers finally making some plays, throwing the deep ball. It was impressive. And then you come away going, man, does Alabama have a quarterback problem? Which we kind of maybe thought they would have, but the reality of Alabama actually having a quarterback problem, when that's not been something for more than a decade, to varying degrees, that's kind of wild to think about.
Let me ask you, I view us as two different types of college football consumers. Mm-hmm. I'm not a casual consumer, but I see myself merely as a consumer, not necessarily as an analyst or can break down X's and O's. I, as a consumer, having watched Georgia kind of ascend to the top of the throne nationally, but especially in the SEC, doesn't mean Alabama's bad, but they've taken a back seat for the first time in 16, 17 years, kind of consistently. Therefore, I wasn't completely shocked to see Texas beat them down there and beat them the way they did. Were you, I don't know, where would you rate it? Would you rate shocked, surprised?
I was mildly surprised because I picked them to win, because it's hard for me to pick against them to lose at home.
Yeah.
But I'm not that surprised. And if you look at the evidence around the country about how rosters are reshaping and how things have moved so rapidly because of the rule changes with the transfer portal, I'm not going to include name, image, and likeness in this for Alabama because they don't have that problem.
They don't have an NIL issue at all.
They don't have that problem. Nick Saban can go in front of the boosters and warn them about everybody else is doing it. He's just telling them in his own way, kind of fear-mongering a little bit, hey, if you guys slow down, money bags in College Station's going to get you, or Los Angeles or Athens, Georgia.
Yeah.
He can do that. But they don't have that problem, because whoever goes to Alabama can go there pretty rest assured that you're going to be all right.
You're
that's
good.
going to be fine.
Comfortable.
But what I do think is hurting Alabama is that their ability, and this is going to be anybody's ability, they're just the first one to do it. Georgia will suffer the same fate soon enough, whether they can maintain and how it shakes out, especially with the 12-team playoff. But what you can't do is sign all these 4- and 5-star guys, then if they don't pan out right away and you take a transfer at their position and put them further back, that guy may leave. Mm-hmm. And I'll just call it 50-50 generously, but it's probably less than that. But this 50-50 shot, he's going to help somebody else.
Yeah.
But you're not able to hoard on the roster anymore.
Sure.
So it's very much similar to, you remember the movie Rudy?
Yes.
Okay. In the movie Rudy, there's a scene where he's talking to a guy in the locker room, and the guy's like, look, I had scholarships to go to 3 Big Ten schools, but my dad wanted me to come here. And then, that was back in the day, was pre-85 scholarship limit. So if you could give as many scholarships you wanted, and schools like Alabama, and Bear Bryant was like, yeah, I'll give this guy a scholarship to come to Alabama,
and then just
knowing that he can't now go to Auburn.
Yeah.
So he's, well, I've got all these guys. He's a good player, but we'll see what happens. Whatever happens, happens, but I've got all the good players. Well, even in the 85 scholarship limit era, because you had to wait a year, like you're essentially when you decide to transfer, you're waiting 2 years to play, right? And everybody wants immediate action nowadays. So even then, you're like, well, I might as well just wait. If I'm going to redshirt here, I'm going to redshirt there. Let's see what happens. So then, once you've made, you just kind of get stuck. But now that you can one time transfer wherever you want to go, Alabama can't develop half these guys that were probably going to be good for them when they were juniors, but now they're going and playing for somebody else when they're a sophomore, and that's a guy you have to replace. So I think it's evident. And then the teams that are right now reaping the benefits of the transfer portal, the Colorado, Florida State, Texas, USC, and I'll throw another one in there, Miami, after this weekend, you can see how they've turned stuff around. Does that mean that any of those schools are going to win a national title? Maybe, maybe not. Probably not, really. I mean, the odds for winning it are really tough. But it does mean that those guys that were helping you and not helping someone else aren't helping you, or not just sitting on your roster. You can't hoard anymore. So I think it's kind of an interesting thing that's happened.
What is the general? I think the easy thing is to poke at Texas fan in this moment where they're rightfully excited and poke them with the Texas is back thing, which is not fair. They rightfully should be really jazzed about winning at Bama. What is the general temperature of Texas fan right now? Are they loud and proud, we are back? Are they measured?
I would say cautiously optimistic.
Okay, which I think is fair.
Which they needed to be.
Yeah.
I think of any fan base in the country that needed to be cut down to size and learn what realism is.
Yeah.
It was Texas.
Yeah.
2005, here's the thing that happened in 2005. Texas fans already had not realized that it had been 30 years since they'd won a national title. They didn't realize it. And then 2005 happened. They made a whole channel about how great they were. Nobody watched it but them. All these things happened, and then they kept expecting it to happen again. And then they realized how long a time it is between 1970 and 2005. And now they feel how long it is between 2005, 2009, the last time they were really good. Yeah. And now they because the information's out there and you can feel it. Because, I didn't grow up in Texas. I grew up in Florida. And so if you had asked me in 1994 in Fort Myers, Florida, if you'd asked any football fan what they think of the University of Texas, they'd have been like, oh, they're cute.
Sure.
Earl Campbell was there. What's happened since then? Because really, the 80s were not a banner decade for Texas. They didn't win any national titles or anything.
No, from about 84 until they snuck in that one Big 12 championship with John Malkovich. But you're right, from 84 to about 99, pretty run-of-the-mill program.
Yeah. And so that's kind of what they're in right now, right?
Yeah.
Until now, Sark's there, and he has realistically addressed the issues of the program. That's part of the problem you have, I think, a lot of times when you move on from a coach that's won, is that programs don't realistically assess where they are in that moment. Mm-hmm. They just assess what happened in this individual season or two that turned the national championship coach into a guy that's not there anymore.
Right.
So Nebraska's in this right now. Nebraska might have, with Matt Rule, someone who has to be forced into reasonably address that it's a long time since 2001. Mm-hmm. And as before, they were just trying to fix, this guy was this, Bill Callahan should have changed the offense. Bo Pelini was too mean. Mike Riley was too nice. Scott Frost, they get there like, well, he'll bring back the glory days because he knows what the glory days are, but he wasn't ready for that job.
Yeah.
And then, so now you have, like, you're kind of forced into, where are you in the modern world? Because the modern football world has changed around you very rapidly.
So fast.
So fast.
Much.
So now you're kind of forced into doing it.
Yeah.
Texas, I don't think really, Mac Brown left, retired, was
Sure.
ushered out, whatever you want to say.
Yes.
Mac Brown's gone. Okay, so then their boosters, and this is why they get the bad rap, we're like, well, obviously we're going to get Nick Saban here because we get whoever the best is.
Yeah.
Not assessing that, no, the College Football Vatican is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama.
Right.
It is not in Austin, Texas.
Right.
Bear Bryant coached at Bama.
Yes.
He did not coach at Texas.
Yes.
This guy is winning at Bama. It is historically better than you.
Yeah.
And so Nick Saban said no. Then Jimbo Fisher said no. Then Jim Mora Jr. said no. And then what? I don't know how.
It's pretty steep.
I don't know how
steep drop there.
How far down the line that you want to go until you get to Charlie Strong as their choice of the head coach.
Yeah.
When he was at Louisville, and he said yes. He came in, did not fairly assess what was going on. Then Tom Herman came in and did not. I think Tom Herman knew what was going on, but he was too high strung to fix it.
Yeah.
He would get drilled down in the minutia of things.
Yeah.
As opposed to like, all right, we got to fix the culture in this room. Well, I'm going to make sure that I put up the PP chart where the media can see it, so they know how good a job I'm doing. Or this guy said something about me on the radio. I'm going to call him. Like, dude, I've said it to a couple of people in this, being in this business long I have. If anything I say to you derails your day, like, you've got bigger problems than me.
Yeah, there's a little sensitivity there, probably.
Yeah. So, like, again, it's, we don't know everything. Like, media people, we don't know everything. We don't know anything. What do we know? We're just here spouting opinions.
Yeah.
And if you're the head coach, you're making so much more money than me.
Yeah.
So much more. You've won at life. You don't need to worry about me. You've won.
Okay, so going back to the Bama-Texas game.
Yeah.
It looks like for the last few years, they have had dudes at the skill positions.
Yeah.
And it just hasn't, for whatever reason, they haven't put it all together. It felt like Saturday, that was one of the games I really was able to watch quite a bit of. Not candidly, Astros-Padres was going on, so I was back and forth. But it felt like, for the first time in a long time, that it was clicking for them. Xavier Worthy, I guess, who has had some drop issues, makes a phenomenal catch.
I think he's had some
ball.
drop issues, and he's had some poor me issues. And I think he's grown up a little bit. I think that was a little bit of it, maturity, you know? Like, and that happened, like, it's going to happen.
That's to be expected with kids.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm indifferent on whether Texas is back. But if they are, this was a huge step in that direction.
Well,
like, I no longer look at them, and after that game, I at least lean more towards, boy, this team is actually really good. They weren't just good today and against a below average to average opponent. That was a really the quality win is an understatement.
Yeah, it's huge. And Quinn Ewers threw them to the win. Like, he was throwing deep passes. That was not something he could do a year ago.
Yeah.
He had his signature win. Sark had his signature win. Now that they've gotten that, they can move on to dealing with, because especially when you're at a program, every coach needs their signature win to go on their runs.
Yeah.
But in individual seasons, you need that signature win. This is the one that propelled you along the way.
Yeah, well, Texas had it in 2005 when they won at Ohio State.
Exactly. So they had that one. And you'll probably need a signature comeback win, which they had in 2005 against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had them absolutely dead to rights. And then Greg Davis and Mac Brown got together and said, okay, here's what play we're going to call in the second half. Vince.
That's right. Vince, run it right. Didn't they have a comeback the year before against Kansas?
Yeah.
Didn't they almost lose to Kansas that other Rose Bowl year? Yeah. That's right.
And so, but they're like, okay. And then Vince would run over like, hey, what play are we running? I think you know.
Yeah.
We're running Vince.
They're like, hey, Vince, on this one, just throw in a pump fake, get your defender up, and keep running.
Yeah.
Just shake it up a little bit.
Here's what we're going to do. after in the fourth quarter, you're going to throw a pass to somebody who's going to be so wide open, you won't understand it. And it's going to confuse you to a point of where it might hurt you, but don't think about it. Because everybody's feeling the same way. Just go. But they had that. So now they've got their signature win. Now they can go about the business of winning the Big 12. Now, look, I don't think that's going to be easy at all. I don't think that this win doesn't, to me, put them way head and shoulders above everybody else.
No, I agree.
Because there are some really good and well-coached teams. And I'm going to tell you, I mean, look, I know that they've beaten Arkansas State and SMU, but they've given up a combined 11 points in those two games, especially against SMU. Most of the times you think you beat SMU. Even
in Oklahoma?
Yeah, Oklahoma. Yeah. That's the defense that might be very improved. So
yeah.
Oklahoma's going to be tough. Kansas State is one of the best coached teams in the entire country. TCU is still TCU despite – look, they lost by 3 to Colorado. Like it was a great win for Colorado, but it was not like a devastating loss for TCU. They lost by 3 points.
No, and that loss could actually end up it could look even better down the road.
Yeah, it probably won't look all that bad.
Right.
Because Colorado's probably going to be hanging in.
Right.
For quite some time.
Yeah.
Especially if they can invent chips on their shoulder to keep going on.
Sure, just keep making stuff up.
On down the line, you know.
Does Texas play Utah this year? I don't have their schedule.
No, Utah's not in yet. So they've got, I would say the toughest.
Oh, that's right.
The toughest games they have left are Oklahoma, Tech, Kansas State, and TCU.
Yeah,
all out there for them.
They're oft forgotten. Shouldn't be. But Kansas State, you don't want to get all braggadocious about Kansas State and be like, well, it's their crown to defend. Although objectively that's true.
Yeah.
And they are, man. Chris Kleiman can coach his butt off.
Yeah.
So
they're
it's
really
going to be
good.
a tough one.
Yeah.
Is that game in Austin or Manhattan? Do we know?
I cannot remember. But yeah, and that's a team that's been tough for them to beat over the last decade or so. They just kind of had their number a little bit.
They had Ron Prince had their number.
Look, the Sunflower State's not been kind to Longhorns.
No,
between the two schools there.
No, it has
not. But
not.
I mean, it's a huge thing for them to to do what they did, because they were not, or like in years past, like the Texas is back game, they beat Notre Dame. Well, it turned out when Joe Tessitore said that, neither of those teams were back at that time.
No,
and early in the season, so that's been a whole thing. But now what they have to do is take this signature win and make sure that it's not just like, we did that, everything should come to us. And the biggest thing that Sark had to fix that I think he has was the culture of entitlement was there. And I've talked to several ex-Texas players that it was starting to really chap their hide a little bit, that they would walk into a place and be like, look, man, I won this ring.
Yeah.
You didn't.
Sure, yeah.
Like, our team did this. You did not. You've got to earn it, and you have to earn it by working as insanely hard as we did.
Yeah.
And that was not happening for a good long while.
Isn't entitlement, though, with anyone that's successful, but with athletes, isn't entitlement really just about degrees? Like, you're just trying to get it to a manageable level.
Yeah.
You're never going to get rid of it. But if you can get it to a manageable level, maybe that's what he's done.
Yeah.
Is at least got it to a point where, like, he can at least put that brass ring out there and say, it's this close. Give me a little bit more, a little less entitlement.
I do think it kind of helped he had that coach in year one, like on the bus that, I don't know if you heard the recording where he's like, the transfer portal is wide open. If you don't want to work this hard, you can jump right in, and we do not care.
Really?
Yeah. And it was one of those things where it came out. I think the person who released it thought they're like, oh, look how mean the coaches are. You're like, no, that's what coaches are.
Yeah.
Like, they're upset because you're not meeting the level of expectation.
Sure. Yeah.
And like, nobody's getting hit here. Like, you're just getting yelled at.
Yeah.
Like,
Toughen
and
up a
so,
little bit there,
but yeah, he unleashed, and it was like, and part of it was, look, you guys have, like, what have you done?
Yeah.
Like, that's, I'm a Cowboys fan. I remember a couple of years ago, like, being in the locker room. I said I'm a Cowboys fan. I also cover the Cowboys. But, like, being in the locker room and, like, watching the guys, like, kind of brag. Like, all these players were, like flaunting their suits and their jewelry and everything. And I'm like, that's fine. I know that, like, that's cool. Except that, like, that you guys haven't won a thing.
Yeah.
And, like, so it's going to come off wrong, whether it's right or not, that you guys might be a little distracted by, by the little things. And then you go back a couple years later when some of those same players are older and they're not doing it because they're like, yeah,
Sure.
I think we might have gotten a little like, oh, I got some money. Let me focus on that and not like what could make me even more.
Yeah. Everybody grows up a little bit.
Yeah.
But going back to Texas Bama, I think it is good. Again, I come at it from a completely consumeristic point of view of, do I want to watch this team in this game? And in the same way that I'm the opposite of you, I loathe the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. I mean, with the fire of 1,000 suns. Mm-hmm. But when they're on Sunday Night Football, I'll watch it because it's an event and they're the Cowboys. Mm-hmm. The same way with I'm not rooting for or against Texas. But when they're good and they're going to give Bama a game in Bryant-Denny, you're dang right I had that thing on.
Oh, yeah. So, look, they've now become one of the more compelling teams in the country. I want to talk about in the next segment one of those other compelling teams, which Miami, with that win against A&M, I got caught a little flat-footed on there. I thought they might be another year away with the athletes, but
sure didn't seem like it.
No, they looked like they might have straightened things out.
You said compelling. I thought we were going straight to Baylor. My fault.
Oh no,
my fault.
We might wait on that. That was a weird game,
bro. Let me tell you something. Again, I'm full consumer mode today. Flipping back and forth between Colorado, Nebraska, and Baylor, Utah was a bad idea because to just see those two things contrast one another in real time, ooh, buddy.
Yeah,
it's a bad deal.
I ran into a Utah fan at Starbucks yesterday who was trying to sell me on Bryson Barnes, and I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I mean,
was it Bryson Barnes' parents?
Might have been. I don't know. He was like, well, we just need to get Rising back. We're completely different about Rising.
Yeah.
So if it was Bryson Barnes' dad, he was.
At least he was honest.
Yeah. I was like, and I asked him this, and for people watching that don't know the geography of Texas, it's so huge. Like,
sure.
Sometimes people will be like, you're in Waco, and you don't mind, have you been to El Paso recently? I'm like, no,
once in my life.
I'm like, no, it's not like somewhere I can get. I've been to Dallas, I've been to Austin, been to Houston, but El Paso is like a commitment.
Yeah,
that's something I've been to Atlanta more times than I've been to El Paso since I lived here because it's about the same distance away.
Yeah, not a quick trip.
So. But the guy was like, "Oh, are you local, Texas, or are you in town?" I was curious because the Starbucks he was, there was no hotels around, so I think he was in a fixer-upper Airbnb.
Gotcha.
But I asked him and he's like, "Oh no, kind of local, Victoria." I'm like, "It's 6 hours from here."
It's not local at all.
I'm like, no. I was like, you might as well just said, yes, I'm from Utah. You're halfway there right now.
Local, Victoria.
So, but whatever. So, anyway, when we come back, we're going to talk about Miami and A&M. Oregon and Texas Tech. Texas Tech, I think, had them there for the taking and then, let them off the hook. But
I may sound like get off my lawn guy for a minute when we talk Oregon Tech, so I apologize in advance.
That's fine. That's fine. Sometimes you need people off your lawn.
Yeah.
Listen, get off my lawn, guys. Not always wrong.
No, I'm not wrong on this one either. I'm just preparing the faithful.
Especially if you've spent some time on that grass.
Yeah.
You win awards.
Worked hard on that grass.
That's right.